Relationship with the observer self. Key mental health concepts. The observer self. Autopilot. Self-awareness. Anchoring attention. The power of the pause. Rumination. Flipping your lid. Amygdala and the amygdala hijack. And the prefrontal cortex.
The observer self versus autopilot. How many times have you been in class and you suddenly realize you have no idea what the teacher said in the last 15 minutes? Or have you ever driven home and not known how you got there? Or what about the times you sent a text only to find out 20 minutes later you're still scrolling through videos? These are all examples of being on autopilot, of going through the motion without being fully present. Many of us live most of the day on autopilot. Autopilot is like AI driving the car instead of you. That might be okay for cars, but you wouldn't want AI driving your whole life. Now, think instead about the aware version of you, the one who pops out of autopilot, that moment of consciousness when your attention returns to the room after tuning out your teacher. Or when you're in your driveway and suddenly realize you've made it home. It's like you were there when the time passed, but your mind was somewhere else. You return to the present with the awareness of where you are. This is what is called your observer self. The concept of the observer self has its roots in Eastern philosophies and is now a common term used in psychology and counseling. The observer self also has other names such as the witness, the wise mind, the true self, and consciousness. You can use any of these terms that work for you. Knowing your observer self is key to living mindfully. Think of a snow globe. When a snow globe is still, the water is clear and the snow is settled at the bottom. You see right through the globe to the other side. But what happens when you shake the globe? Everything becomes cloudy, the scene and shapes are no longer well defined. What's inside is obscured. The same can be said for when we get caught up in our thoughts or emotions without calm perspective. We get disconnected from our observer self. We get lost in an emotional snowstorm. Luckily, we all have an observer self that we can learn to access when we need it. The observer self helps us recognize when we're in a snowstorm, even as it's happening. Being able to observe the present moment without immediate judgment can help us stay clear and calm. This helps us feel more in control of our lives and focus our energy on the things that are really important to us. Sometimes, when we are stressed or very emotional, it can feel like we can't get to the observer self. Practicing using your observer self regularly when you're calm and firmly inside your emotional window of tolerance, which is that emotional zone where you are able to be curious and learn, can help. Practicing can be as simple as taking a walk with your dog and noticing as many new things that you've never noticed before. You can practice observing without thinking too hard or judging. With practice, you'll be able to more easily get in touch with the observer self when you're stressed, when you're in a disagreement, or even when you're really down about a situation and you feel like it'll last forever. When you can get into an observing stance, take a step back and survey how you feel in the moment. You'll be able to better take care of your feelings instead of reacting to them. Let's try practicing right now to get a sense of your observer self. Anchoring with the senses. Take a moment to get comfortable. Bring your attention to your breathing. Notice your inhale and notice your exhale. Now gently move your attention to 3 things you see in the room that you hadn't noticed before. Next, draw your attention to 3 sounds in the room, noting each one silently. Now focus your attention on 3 things you can feel through touch. This could be the sensation of your shirt on your skin, or the texture of the table or chair. Slowly release your attention from the senses. Come back to focus on your breath. Reflecting on the practice. Take a moment. How did this activity make you feel? What was happening in your mind and body? Did it make you feel more anxious or stressed or calm? Did you notice things that you hadn't noticed before? Mindful eating. Before starting this practice, get an orange or a banana. Take a moment to get comfortable. Bring your attention to the fruit in front of you. Without touching it, observe the outside. Notice everything you can about how it looks on the outside. Take a moment to think about how this fruit got here, possibly beginning when it was a seed all the way to the table in front of you. Now pick up your fruit and observe how it smells, how it feels, noticing its texture and temperature. Next, you can begin to peel it. Using your observer self, bring your attention to the peel and try to notice all the aspects of the peel. Then, you can begin to break the fruit into segments or large pieces. Notice the pieces as whole units, and then break one in half. Take a moment to look at the piece and notice the raw insides. Now take a bite, chewing slowly and deliberately, noticing the taste and texture of the fruit in your mouth. As you swallow, try to follow the piece as far down your digestive tract as possible, noting when you can no longer feel it. Reflecting on the practice. Take a moment. How did this activity make you feel? What was happening in your mind and body? Did it make you feel more anxious or stressed or calm? Did you notice things you hadn't before? Mindful walking. Take 5 minutes to get up and go outside. Focus your attention on things around you. Walk slowly, like you have nowhere to go, but you want to notice the things around you. Look around and find things you think are interesting or beautiful. Take time to explore each one in as much detail as possible. Spend as much time as you'd like looking at each object, and then move to continue your walk. Keep stopping and observing, and then walking and looking. After 5 minutes, come back to the classroom and sit down quietly. Reflecting on the practice. How was that experience different than how you normally walk around? What did you notice? How did that practice make you feel? What happened to your thoughts?
Autopilot and self-awareness. As you can probably guess by now, autopilot is the opposite of the observer self. When someone is on autopilot, they're not consciously focusing their attention. But why do people go into autopilot? Sometimes it's because they're just not aware their attention has wandered, or they're tired, anxious, or want to avoid problems and hard things. Wanting to numb out and avoid difficult feelings is a natural tendency. We all go into autopilot sometimes. Taking a break from thinking and focusing helps us relax and reset. Sometimes tuning out the rest of the world by doing mindless tasks or distracting ourselves can be helpful to save energy or calm down. Autopilot isn't necessarily bad. It's more, how much of our life are we on autopilot? When we live in that place too much, we don't learn to deal with our emotions or the challenges we face. The more we meet challenges straight on with steadiness and care, and with the support of others, the more capable we become. Would your life be different if, on a walk or a bus ride home from class, you focused on your surroundings, noticing branches swaying on the trees, people walking on the street, a new coffee shop, or a fuzzy caterpillar on the sidewalk instead of being on autopilot and zoning out? This is the difference being mindful can bring to your life. Not being present with your life is basically like losing time, losing touch with what's around you and yourself. To extend the amount of time you are really present and off autopilot, you have to have self-awareness. Self-awareness is the understanding of your thoughts, behaviors, and feelings, why you do, what gives you energy or drains you and why, and how your behaviors affect you and others.
Autopilot and living authentically. Your teens and 20s are a unique time of exploration and identity development. But to develop a strong sense of self, it's important to be present and not on autopilot. This stage of life is about figuring out who you are. Doing this means trying things out, noticing what you do and don't enjoy, and reflecting and expressing yourself in different ways. That is, getting in touch with and developing your observer self. Being present is essential to this development and important because a strong sense of self is linked to higher self-esteem, positive mental health, and reduced impulsive behavior. Your observer self also helps you live more creatively and authentically. When we're living on autopilot, we're not really engaged in what we're doing or wanting to be doing. You can see how mental health could be affected by being on autopilot much of the time. If we're not fully present in our lives, we may miss those daily moments of beauty and joy. When we live more from our observer self, we can step back and be centered, even under pressure, and make decisions that help us develop into our true, unique selves.
The power of the pause. There is another powerful aspect of the observer self beyond just noticing, and it's called the pause. Pausing means slowing down, being more reflective, and using the observer self instead of being caught in emotions and thoughts. There are 2 reasons to pause. 1, you are more likely to stay in your window of tolerance, so small things won't disrupt you. 2, you are more likely to be more involved and interested in life because you're experiencing more of what's around you instead of being caught in your thoughts. However, being able to pause and observe your thoughts and feelings without getting caught up in them is so much harder than people seem to realize. People often say, "Don't let it get to you," or "just calm down," when giving advice about dealing with stressful situations. If it were that easy, everyone would be peacefully pausing before communicating their frustration and anger. Things like road rage would disappear. The truth is that pausing when you're having intense feelings is one of the hardest mental health skills to practice. You can know a lot of skills for your mental health, but if you can't pause first, it's hard to use those skills. Think about how many adults haven't learned this skill. But learning how to pause when you're really upset can save you from regret, damaged relationships, and anxiety. In short, Pausing is the skill that allows you to respond how you want to. And pausing does more than prevent problems. This seemingly simple little behavior also greatly enhances life. We'll work on a skill together to help you take that pause when you want or need it. But first, let's explore the neuroscience of why pausing is so difficult. Flipping your lid, the neuroscience of the pause. Your teens and 20s are a critical period of brain development. Right now, your brain is growing and changing more than at any other time of your life, other than infancy, especially in areas related to emotion and impulse control. Your teens and 20s are also a time of a lot of firsts. Your first time having a class schedule with a lot of different teachers, your first time driving, or maybe even your first serious relationship. It's an intense time. With all this brain development going on, with the brain growing and changing so quickly, and all those hormones surging, you'll feel more intensely right now than at any other time in your life. The amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. Two parts of the brain that play key roles in how you feel and act are the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. In your teens and early 20s, the prefrontal cortex is still developing, while the amygdala has already matured. What does this mean for you? Let's look at what these two areas of the brain do for you in order to answer this question. The prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is sometimes called the rational part of the brain. It's responsible for complex thinking like planning for the future, learning new information, and controlling impulses, like cutting class or snapping back at a parent. It's also the part of the brain that makes metacognition possible. In other words, the prefrontal cortex is a key part of the observer self that helps you to be self-aware. It isn't fully developed until about age 25. The amygdala and the amygdala hijack. The amygdala, on the other hand, is an area of the brain that operates based on emotion instead of reason. Because it's driven by emotions, the amygdala makes it possible to act fast without thinking. For example, if you hear a loud noise behind you, your brain instinctively perceives it as a threat before realizing there's no danger. One of the main jobs of the amygdala is to alert us to danger, like a smoke detector alerts you to a fire. It's a survival mechanism that allows us to act on impulse, and when it gets activated, it shuts down the prefrontal cortex, so you can act quickly without thinking. Think about what that means. When your brain senses danger, your ability to think rationally decreases, and so does your ability to control what you do. This happens because your brain becomes focused on the most efficient way to escape the threat. This is called the amygdala hijack. It's useful if you're in actual danger, but sometimes the amygdala sounds an alarm even when there's no real danger. It's like when the smoke detector in your house goes off while you're just frying some bacon, or a loud noise that puts your system on alert is only a balloon popping. One of the problems with the amygdala hijack is it can make you do something you regret later. For example, if someone accidentally stepped on your new white sneakers at school and instantly you're yelling at them. Afterward, you might feel embarrassed and regret that you overreacted. In other words, the amygdala hijack sends you outside your emotional window of tolerance, the zone where you can more easily manage your feelings.
Flipping your lid. Another way to understand the amygdala hijack is to use the hand model of the brain called flipping your lid. It is a technique developed by psychiatrist Daniel Siegel. First, make a fist, tucking your thumb inside of it. Your fingers represent the prefrontal cortex, and your thumb represents the amygdala. This closed fist is the brain on line, where the prefrontal cortex is connected with the rest of your brain. In this state, you are in your window of tolerance. You can manage feelings, problem solve, and respond thoughtfully. Now flip your fingers up like this. This is like flipping your lid, where the prefrontal cortex goes offline and you lose connection with that rational part of your brain. The amygdala takes over and you find yourself outside of your window of tolerance. which triggers intense emotions and survival responses such as yelling, panicking, or shutting down. This is also where the saying, fight, flight, or freeze comes from. The brain in your teens and early 20s. Remember our question earlier? What does it mean for you if the prefrontal cortex is still developing, but the amygdala is already mature? One thing it means is that you process information largely through the amygdala. As a result, you feel emotions like joy, sadness, anger, and love more intensely than adults, who process information primarily through the prefrontal cortex. We want you to remember that when you're feeling really bad and it seems like it will never end, that these feelings ease up as you get older. Second, in many adolescents and young adults, though not all of them, a more active amygdala is related to seeking out more exciting experiences and taking more risks. Whether or not this is true for you depends on your personality, relationships, and life experiences. Either way, being a teen is a unique time of life when your brain is extremely adaptable. It's an important time for exploring who you are and who you want to be, separate from your parents or caretakers. Third, having a strong amygdala and a still developing prefrontal cortex also makes it more likely the amygdala hijack will happen. As a teen, it's harder to keep from acting impulsively. It's not necessarily bad to act on your emotions. You can definitely channel them to do great things. But if emotions are coming from only the amygdala, you might wind up doing something you wish you hadn't later. It does all happen automatically, but that doesn't make you powerless. There are things you can do about it to change it for the better. The pause and the observer self are powerful antidotes to the amygdala hijack, and mindfulness is a way to strengthen your ability to tap into the observer self. Research shows that mindfulness activities develop the brain in helpful ways, like meditation and yoga, which increase gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, making it less likely to get hijacked. This means you can have more control over how you respond to a stressful situation instead of just reacting impulsively. Let's practice. Developing a relationship with the observer self. There are a lot of mindfulness-based practices that help develop our observer self. Some of the most common touch on breath awareness, eating mindfully, and focusing on the 5 senses. In each of the practices, you do your best to stay in the present moment, without judgment and with full attention, increasing awareness of your surroundings. We call this anchoring attention. This helps to strengthen attention and pull away from operating on autopilot. These mindful exercises are commonly used because they're relatively easy to access when someone is feeling stuck or stressed in everyday life. The more these skills are practiced, the easier they can be applied. Sometimes a thought or emotion becomes what we call sticky. We ruminate on it, meaning we think about the same thing for a long time and can't seem to switch our attention. Like if you can't stop worrying about how something you said might have sounded dumb. Ruminating too much can be related to depression and anxiety. Developing the ability to switch off autopilot and move our attention to something else can help gain perspective and reduce distress, which allows us to respond rather than react impulsively, resulting in problem solving more effectively. Anchoring awareness, the check-in. To introduce the idea of relationship building with our observer self, we start with a brief mindfulness activity, the check-in. The check-in helps us get in touch with our observer self, to become more aware and focus our attention, and to help develop the ability to pause before reacting to thoughts and emotions. Regular check-ins allow us to notice how we are doing throughout the day. We can become more aware of whether at any time we are inside or outside of our window of tolerance. To introduce this practice, we use the concept of a wheel. In this model, the hub of the wheel represents the observer self, and the rim represents anything and everything we can observe in life. For example, we can focus our attention on the outer world, on our inner experiences, or on other people's thoughts and feelings. We can move our attention to the person sitting next to us, the daydreaming going on in our head, or the text we just got. All would be a part of the rim of the wheel. The constant is the observer self, which is the hub of the wheel. That is the part of us that can observe our thoughts and emotions without getting caught up and going around and around in the wheel. Knowing we can live in this place can help us stay calm and centered, instead of going on the rim, spinning, and getting caught in our thoughts and emotions. Let's practice. Begin by moving your attention to your breath. Notice the breath gently moving your body. Is it fast or slow? Does your breath go all the way into your stomach, or is it shallow, stopping in your chest? Any way you are breathing is just fine. We are simply here to observe and pay attention. Now shift your attention to your thoughts. What's going on up there? Is it calm, or are there a lot of thoughts? Are you worrying about something in particular today? Can you watch your thoughts from a distance, like clouds in the sky, each thought coming and going? If your mind wanders or gets caught in a thought, that is fine. Part of the practice is noticing that and bringing your attention back to the observer self. Now move your attention to your emotions, noticing that emotions are generally experienced in your body. Become aware of where you're experiencing emotions. Are they in your stomach, your chest, or throat? Do they feel like tightness or warmth? Are they big or little sensations? Do they move or change intensity levels? Just notice what's going on inside. Finally, check in with your body. To know how our bodies are, we usually need to move. In your seat or standing up, begin to move and stretch. Notice places where you might have some tightness or discomfort. Notice areas where you feel flexible or good. Now, if you aren't in your chair, come back to a seated position and just notice any subtle changes that might have happened during the practice.
Yeah, that feels better.
Reflecting on the practice. What did you notice? What might you do to take care of yourself today based on your check-in? For example, if you notice you were anxious, what might help you feel calmer? If you had tight muscles in your neck or shoulders, could you take time to stretch or relax? The check-in is useful because you can do it briefly, anytime during the day, to get more in touch with where you are in your window of tolerance, and notice what you need to do to take care of yourself in each moment.
Summary. Think about the last time you really looked around on a daily walk or a ride home, or those moments in life with a friend when you laughed so hard you cried. These are moments of being present and not on autopilot. Usually, these are moments when we find meaning, fulfillment, and joy in our lives. Developing healthy relationships with our thoughts, emotions, and body begins with accessing our observer self. Our ability to use our attention well and increase our level of self-awareness. You can practice pausing and anchoring attention on any object, such as your breath, a leaf, or a flower, or the food you're eating. Beyond reducing stress, mindfulness allows us to appreciate beauty and experience happiness. The mind will wander back to our sticky thoughts or emotions, and the practice is gently bringing the attention back to an anchor. Each time you catch yourself on autopilot or lost in a thought and bring your attention back to an anchor, you strengthen your attention and awareness. For myself and everybody on our team, we really hope this information helps you reach your goals and feel better each day.